The expanded college football playoff is upon us. Almost. There are the first games this weekend, and I'm really looking forward to the Friday night matchup and the early game on Saturday. I think we are in for 4 pretty good games. I think we're in for probably 3 maybe very good games, and then maybe one stinker. But I'm looking at the first 2 games today. The Friday night game between Notre Dame and Indiana, and the Saturday noon game between SMU and Penn State. So let's start with Indiana and Notre Dame, because I find this matchup somewhat intriguing because, one, and this might be more of an overarching point that needs to be made. If Indiana loses handily to Notre Dame, if SMU loses big time to Penn State, that does not mean that those 2 schools were undeserving of being in the playoff. It does not mean that those 2 schools should have been behind Alabama and Ole Miss and that the SEC got hosed out of a playoff spot. Those 2 things can be totally different things. Can Indiana lose by 50 to Notre Dame and deserve to be in the playoff instead of Alabama? Yes, unequivocally. And could SMU lay an egg and get boat raced by Penn State and that mean that Alabama deserved the final spot? No. Those are separate issues. And I hate when we conflate the 2. So let me get that out of the way right now. Whoever loses in the first round does not mean, and because we've done this basically every year in the college football playoff, somebody in there gets their ass kicked. And the argument instantly becomes, well, see, I told you they should have put the number 5 team in instead of the number 4 team. No, that is not how it works. So, moving on from that. Notre Dame runs the football really well. Jeremiah Love is as electrifying as a player you are going to find in college football, in my opinion. And one of the strengths that Indiana has is that they stop the run. Can Indiana put Notre Dame in a situation where Riley Leonard has to beat them with his arm? I don't know the answer to that question. But the Fighting Irish are going to be well rested. And they've had plenty of time to work on that aspect. How much time? Was it enough time? Because if Notre Dame has semifinal or national championship aspirations, and they're one of 12 teams who have the opportunity to hold that gold trophy at the end of the year, they're going to have to throw the football effectively. Maybe not explosively. Maybe not to the point where Riley Leonard needs to throw for 300 yards or whatever. But when it's 3rd and 11 and you are in no man's land, can you pick up the first down by throwing the football? Can Indiana force Notre Dame into those situations? Can Indiana force Notre Dame into obvious passing situations? That's the key to the game for the Hoosiers. If they can, you have to feel pretty good, I think, about their chances. I get the impression that Indiana is not a glowing favorite by any stretch of the imagination in the game. I'm not a sports bettor. I don't bet, one, because none of this shouts self-control, right? Like, and I don't make enough money to learn that I don't know as much as I think I do by losing it. There's a reason there are skyscrapers in the middle of the desert, and it ain't because I'm going to win. I'm not a sports betting guy, but Notre Dame is a 7-point favorite in that game, and the over-under being 52.5, both feel kind of low to me. I think this might be a high-scoring game, despite the temperatures, despite the potential weather, despite it being a Friday night game. I think Notre Dame, Indiana is one of those games. It's like a 35-23 win for Notre Dame. But if Indiana, and I recognize wholly that this is boiling it down to insanely simple, but if Indiana can put Notre Dame in obvious pass situations time and time again, I think the Hoosiers have a good shot if they can limit Notre Dame's effectiveness running the football, because that's what they do pretty well. They stop the run. What does Notre Dame do good offensively? They run the football. Which one of you wins out? That's the difference in the ball game. I'll take Notre Dame. I think Notre Dame beats Indiana. I think they beat them somewhat handily, to tell you the truth. I am still pretty big on the Irish. I don't know that I would pick them to beat Georgia, but I would tell you right now that should they beat Indiana, I think the Notre Dame-Georgia game is a lot closer than people instantly think it is. But for right now, all Notre Dame has to worry about is the Hoosiers. The Hoosiers have had time to get healthy offensively. They've had time to dream some things up to prepare. But I'll take Notre Dame somewhat comfortably to cover that 7-point spread. But I would also take the over. That's just me. And then the noon game on Saturday, SMU versus Penn State. How much has SMU leaned into the, because I don't know that you can. I recognize that you can, but the idea that nobody wants us here, nobody believes in you. At SMU, you just got selected to play in an exclusive invitation-only tournament over not only the most storied brand in college football over the course of the last 15 years, but arguably the most storied brand in college football history. So you can't play the nobody believes in you, nobody wants to see you here, because like you got picked. It's the same, like I've said before, and I'll say it again and again and again. The underdog story at some point doesn't work, right? Like Baker Mayfield was still trying to psych himself up when he was with the Cleveland Browns. Nobody believes in you. Nobody wanted you. You were the number 1 overall pick, my guy. Like they could have selected anybody, anyone, and they chose you. SMU, they could have selected Ala freaking Bama, and they didn't. They selected you. So I don't know that you can play the nobody believes in us, we're the ultimate underdog card. Penn State doesn't perform well in big games. They don't. Under James Franklin, time and time again, outside of beating Ohio State in 2016, Penn State doesn't perform on the grand stage. Is this the time that they break that? I'll say yes, mostly because I don't know if SMU is deserving to be in the field or not, to tell you the truth. Should it have been Alabama at number 11 or number 12? You'd probably make that case. And you'd probably have a pretty strong case. But that's not what is going to happen on the field. What's going to happen on the field is SMU is going to play Penn State. And can Penn State exercise those demons? I think so. And I recognize that is putting faith in somebody who has burnt Penn State fans time and time again. That the idea that you're going to believe in James Franklin, that by God, this is going to be the time that we are going to get over the hump and win the game that people don't believe we're going to win. That when it's a top 5 matchup, a top 10 matchup, a Big Ten championship, etc., that by God, this is the game we're going to win. And time after time after time, Penn State has gotten burned by that thinking. I think Penn State wins. I don't know that it's super close either. It's an 8.5-point spread. I would take Penn State to cover that because I think they're too good and too efficient offensively against what I think is an overmatched SMU defense. I think Drew Aller plays good enough for Penn State to get a W. But I say that knowingly, wholly recognizing that if you were to choose one of these first-round games to be the upset, because right now I'm not 100% convinced that it's not chalk in the first round, that it's not the 6, 7, the 5, 6, 7, and 8 seeds moving on. I'm not 100% convinced that that is the easy play. But if you were to ask person after person after person, which one of these games is the surpriser? Which one of these is the upset special? I think the overwhelming majority of folks would tell you Penn State losing at home to SMU would be the most likely option. Because I don't know that Tennessee over Ohio State would be a gigantic upset. But SMU over Penn State, I think would be. I think would be a big time, like, there would be a lot of discussion about what Penn State should do with James Franklin after a first round loss to SMU. Because right now, the people in Happy Valley are licking their chops. When the bracket came out, it was, holy cow, Penn State has the easiest path to the semis, which I would maybe disagree with because I think Texas's might be easier. But when you look at that path to the semifinals, Penn State's path could include the number 11 team, the number 3 team, which most people agree is the number 11 team, and then potentially the number 10 team or the number 7 team. Penn State's path to the national championship game could be littered with SMU, Boise State, and Indiana. But only if you beat SMU. So when your eyes get real big, when you see that path in front of you, you have to take care of checkpoint number 1. And can Penn State take care of checkpoint number 1? I'll say yes, but I don't feel good about it at all. You get that queasy, uneasy feeling like this is why I don't bet, because should it be absolutely slam dunk, Penn State's going to kick the hell out of SMU. That's what it should be. Whether it turns out that way, I don't know. But I'm going to put my money, my proverbial money, on Penn State. So I think Penn State and Notre Dame move on. Want to know your thoughts? Give me your score predictions in the comments down below. Want to know what you think, who you think is moving on in the first round of the expanded college football playoff. That'll do it for today's episode of the Daily Huddle. I appreciate you making us a part of your day, however it is, wherever it is you're doing so. If you're watching on YouTube, hit the subscribe button. Make sure you're getting all the great college football content we're pumping out. If you're listening on the podcast feed, drop a 5-star review. It goes a long way in helping out the channel. I'll see you tomorrow for another episode of the Daily Huddle.